I think I've always been super curious about things. I think
Mm.
curiosity rules my life. I've always been curious, and once I learn things, I have this obsession with teaching. My curiosity inspires me to learn a lot of random weird stuff, and then I seem obsessed with teaching that stuff once I master it. If we look at criminals anywhere across the world, America, developing world, anywhere, criminals want to get paid, but they don't want to get hurt and they don't want to get caught. So what they're looking for is a victim that has something that they want, and that may be a possession, money, a phone, a purse. It may be their body, kidnapping, rape, something like that. A person who has something that they want in a scenario where they're not likely to get hurt or caught. That is the universal throughout everywhere, America or otherwise. All the criminals operate by that. 2023, I found a new treatment that didn't have the side effects associated with the traditional treatments. Did that surgery, looked great. My cancer was eradicated, and just recently I found out it's back again. So it's kind of this
Wow.
up and down, but I've kind of already dealt with the whole idea that this thing could eventually kill me, and that's okay because I've lived a good life. I'm gonna, fight it as best that I can, as long as my quality of life isn't diminished by that. I'm not in any hurry to go, but when it takes me, and I'm just gonna live a good life the best that I can until then.
If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please subscribe to Defenders Live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and join our group on Facebook as well. And if you don't want to miss another episode, you can sign up for email notifications at defenders-live.com. Greg Ellifritz owns Active Response Training, a business that allows him to travel around the world teaching students how to win gunfights, outsmart terrorists, provide medical care in austere conditions, and generally become more formidable adversaries in hostile environments. Greg recently retired after serving 25 years as a police officer. During his tenure, Greg spent 13 years as the full-time tactical training officer for a Central Ohio Police Department. In that training position, he was responsible for developing and instructing all of the in-service training for his 55 officer agency. In addition to the training position, he also served as patrol officer, firearms armorer, bike patrol officer, bike patrol coordinator, sniper, and field training officer during the course of his career. He instructed students at the Tactical Defense Institute for 17 years and served as lead instructor for TDI's ground fighting, knife fighting, active shooter, impact weapons, and extreme close quarters shooting classes. Greg holds instructor, master instructor, or armorer certifications in more than 85 different weapon systems, defensive tactics programs, and law enforcement specialty topics. In addition to these instructor certifications, Greg has successfully completed more than 4,500 hours of documented formal training with the leading firearms, empty hand fighting, and edged weapons instructors in the country. Greg additionally served as an adjunct instructor for the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy, teaching firearms, defensive tactics, bike patrol, knife defense, and physical fitness topics. He has taught firearms and self-defense classes at the national and international level through the American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers, the International Association of Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors, Gunsight, the Range Master Tactical Conference, and the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police. He has a master's degree in public policy and management with a focus on criminal justice policy issues and has written for numerous publications and websites, including The Firearms Instructor, Ohio Police Chief, Combat Handguns, survivalblog.com, Concealed Carry Magazine, Prime Media's Personal and Home Defense Annual, Recoil Magazine, and American Handgunner. Greg wrote the Amazon #1 best-selling book, Choose Adventure, Safe Travel in Dangerous Places, and will be following that publication with several more safety travel books within the next few years. That's a lot of information about Greg Ellifritz. And just to let you know, I have a co-host with me tonight, Mr. Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA. So let's bring both of those gentlemen onto the show. Hey guys.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So this will be fun, Adam. We get to pair up here, attack Greg with all the questions
Double
on
team
our
attack.
minds.
Well, Greg, it's good to have you here. You've been a hero of mine, a guy I've listened to and watched for a long time. So I can't tell you what an honor it is to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on the podcast.
I'm going to start with the opening question, Adam. Are you okay with that? Okay. I have to know this because this is my nature. I'm curious about why people do what they do. And I read in your bio, I hear you have over 25 experience in law enforcement. You recently retired, 4,500 hours of formal training. That is mind blowing to me. And you've dedicated your life to serving, protecting, and educating people. Why, Greg?
Well,
Why is that who you are and what you do?
well, I passed my psychological test to become a police officer. I would normally say I'm mentally ill, but I got paperwork that says I'm not. But sometimes I question that. I think I've always been super curious about things. I think
Mm,
curiosity rules my life. I've always been curious, and once I learn things, I have this obsession with teaching. I started
um,
really young. I was in Boy Scouts and went up through the ranks there, teaching younger Boy Scouts, and was a scout counselor, and then was a personal trainer all through college, teaching that stuff. My bachelor's degree was in environmental science, and after I graduated college, I became a park naturalist, teaching edible and medicinal wild plant classes. And then I became a
wow.
cop, and then the teaching just kind of went on from there. So it's just my curiosity, and inspires me to learn a lot of random weird stuff, and then I seem obsessed with teaching that stuff once I master it.
Wow. So really what your bio should have been was a list of what you haven't done.
Maybe so.
Yeah, instead of what you have done. That's
my
incredible
my
to me.
my training ADHD is coming out here a little bit.
I think it's cool. I love it. I
Thank
can
you.
relate because you learn something new, you wanna share it with other people. This could
That's it.
help somebody else, right?
That's it. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's so cool. So the retirement journey,
Yeah.
you recently retired. How long have you been in retirement?
Uh, Almost 4 years now. So I
Okay.
retired in mid-August of 2020.
What was that transition like for you?
It was actually pretty smooth for me, because I intentionally paved the way to do it. I built a training business about 10 years before my retirement. My goal was to kind of seamlessly transition into doing the training stuff on the side. So I started working on that, building that business. I guess back in 2010, 2011. I had done some training before then commercially, but I really started working on my own business and brand at that point in time. And by the time I retired, I decided I wanted a change in environment. I'd lived in Ohio my entire life and I wanted something a little bit different. So I moved down to Texas and I'm
Mm.
enjoying it down here now. And now I just travel all over the country and occasionally all over the world and teach classes a few times a week, so or a few times a month. So I usually do about 2 weekends a month, and between that, I do some writing, and it's been pretty nice. It's not bad. I'm making a good living working about 40 days a year. So I'm very much in favor of this retirement gig.
So I want to jump in here for a second, right? Most cops, it seems like when we retire, we leave the law enforcement world, right? It seems like there's a weight lifted. For me, the day
Yes.
I hung it all up and I was completely done, I'll tell you, for the next week, I felt like just a weight was off me. It was the most freeing feeling in the world. And I've heard that from other cops. Did you experience the same thing?
Absolutely. I knew probably my last 5 years that I
Yeah.
wasn't really happy during my last 5 years, and I wanted to get out. And it was just such a relief when I was able to do it. The way our pension structure worked in Ohio, if I would have left at 20 years, I would have gotten a 30% pension. And if I would have stayed
Ooh,
25 years, I
ooh.
get a 60% pension. So that last 5 years doubles my pension. It's truly the golden handcuffs. I could have certainly gone at 20 or maybe even a little bit earlier and just done my training gig, but I would have been
Yeah.
leaving a lot of money on the table. So I sucked it up and finished out 25.
I sure walk lighter for the next, it seems like
Yes.
forever. Occasionally the sound of the siren calls, but then I see on a traffic stop or I hear somebody I love deeply who's a cop talk about their local DV or DUI, and I realize I don't want it anymore.
I just today I saw a cop directing traffic. It's like 105 degrees down
Right?
here in Austin, and I thought I don't miss that at
Nope.
all.
Nope. Thanks.
So I wonder if I should ask the question then, Adam. The question I had was, what would you tell somebody who's thinking about going into law enforcement, especially right now?
Is this to Adam or to me?
Oh,
It's to
you.
you.
Oh, to me. Oh, okay. Man, if I cared about that person, I would try to steer them some other direction. I can't, I talked to the officers that I used to work with, and just in the less than 4 years it's been since I've retired, that job has changed so much and not for the better. It used to be fun. We used to be encouraged to arrest violent criminals and were rewarded for doing such. It made it a tremendously exciting and rewarding career. And that isn't around anymore. But on the other side of things, we still need good cops. I talk to my fellow officers that I used to work with, and they complain about how poor the quality of the candidates are that now, because no one wants to be a cop, and how they're having to hire people just because they need bodies that they would have passed over 5 years ago without any, without even giving them a look. They're hiring those people now. So we still need good people, and I want some good people to apply, but I can't personally recommend the job. Misery at this point in time.
So is this jurisdictional though, right? Bigger city cop where you were at, where I was at, is that jurisdictional? Let's say it's smaller town cop, or let's say it's a state that is very cop friendly, or a much smaller department that's still doing cop stuff and okay with it and sort people around. Would you say that's jurisdictional? The warning not to, or do you say that's just across the board no matter what?
There are certainly some jurisdictions that are better than others. And I wrote right after I retired what my predictions would be 10 years from now in the future. I guess it's only 6 years from now from the point that I wrote it. And I wrote that we're going to see a huge disparity because those jurisdictions that do reward good cop work and do prosecute the criminals, those are going to attract the better police officers, and they're going to have a lower crime rate as a result of that. And I think it's eventually going to go towards a two-tiered system where you've got cops that are working in agencies that take care of them and are very much in favor of arresting the bad guys, and then you'll have the cops in the places that don't. And I think there's going to be a wide disparity in both job performance, job benefits, and crime rates between those two different jurisdictional types. And I can see it happening right now. I can see, I live in a suburb of Austin, Texas right now, and I see just a flood of Austin officers moving towards the larger suburbs in a couple counties over that just handle business a little bit differently. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend as things worsen in the big cities, especially.
I guess the way I think of it is, if you were going to become a cop, or if I was advising somebody, I'd find the right kind of chief that you think is going to be there for a while, and go to, or the right kind of sheriff, and go to that sheriff for a while. And again, if you know cops or sheriffs and chiefs of police, they tend to only last about 3 years on average, right? So that tells me that if I was going to try to find a really good department or advise somebody to go to it, I need to be ready to go within 4 or 5 years, because that chief may change. And if it changes, you may not get a good one, which I've experienced. Two bad chiefs. Well, in that case, then the spirals. But if you can find a good one, say Mark Lamb in Pinal County, right where we're at, I mean, that'd be great. But you go to most other places, it'd be a bad idea.
And that's, the other thing, do you want to jump ship and lose all your seniority and all of your benefits with regard to that? I had some good chiefs and I had some bad chiefs when I did, but, I was able to outlast a couple of the bad chiefs. And, when I got hired, we had a really, really good chief, and the next one was okay, and the next one was horrible. And I managed to live through the okay and the horrible, and then we got another good one again. So it's the constant up and down thing. But I think you're right. Finding an administration that's favorable and finding a culture that kind of supports excellence rather than mediocrity would be what I would tell the new officers to be looking for.
And as a whole, I would say there's less good than there is good across the U.S.
Yes, I would agree.
Interesting. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I want to make sure people, like, right out of the gate, know, Greg, about your weekend knowledge dump, because honestly, I look forward to these. And I know, at least in my circle, people just share them rapidly as soon as it comes out. And the compilation of information that you put on these is remarkable. Not only is it incredibly good information, it's a wide variety of topics. If I may, just a few of the highlights of just the last one you put out. You talked about physical fitness. You put out a 9-week sprinting program, and you didn't just like slop it up there and what's this all about? You gave us a reason. Why is this important? It says, I was once talking to a mentor who has vast experience killing lots of our country's enemies over a long period of time. I asked him what he thought the single most useful thing to practice if one wanted to increase one's chance of surviving a gunfight. And his answer was 20-yard sprints. Being able to quickly escape a bad scene or move to cover is far more useful in combat than a sub-second draw. Just little tidbits like that. And then that goes from physical fitness, then you go into a non-confrontational stance, which is an essential defensive skill, behavioral cues that can get you out of the fight before you get into it. You're addressing teaching. You're talking about smart teaching concepts to us instructors. You're talking about the district court vacating the ATF pistol brace rule. Good information to have. You're talking about dry fire, active shooter response, 5 tips for better appendix carry. It just is it's something for everyone. which I appreciate.
Thank you. It's that curiosity I talked about earlier. I'm just obsessed with learning new things and obsessively read articles on the internet, read books, read a lot. I just decided, when I started my website back in 2012, I decided, one day a week I'm just going to share all the cool things that I found for that week, and
Yeah, it's
that
so
that
helpful.
was the weekend knowledge dump. So every Friday I put a list, and it's usually 25 to 30 links most weekends,
Yeah.
of just the stuff that I found cool that I thought my readers might like as well.
Yeah, you make it sound like not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It really is. For the audio only people, I want to shout out it's activeresponsetraining.net for the weekend knowledge dump and other blog posts. And then to get your book, it's chooseadventurebook.com, right?
Yes,
Okay.
or you can buy it right on Amazon. So the book's called Choose Adventures. The
Yeah.
website supporting the book is there, and activeresponsetraining.net for the articles. I try to write one or two additional articles a week in addition to the knowledge dump that people in the training world, mostly firearms training focused.
Hmm.
If you're into that field, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's funny. I often get people who tell me, I love your weekend knowledge dump, but I don't have time to read all the articles
It's a
that you
lot.
post up, and
Yeah.
they don't realize that I go through about 7,000 articles a week just to find
Ooh,
those 30 that I post.
No
And I
kidding.
I don't deeply read all of those. I skim a lot of them and throw some out right off the bat. But I've got an RSS feed on my computer that's tracking about 600 different websites, and every time
Wow.
they post something, I check it out and see if it's worthy of inclusion. So I just laugh. You have no idea. If you can't read those 30, you have no idea what I've been doing all week.
And this might be a good time too, Adam. You said you were captivated by Greg's writing style. He has a unique way of writing, and he's just a good writer.
I'm glad you brought that up, right? I mean, to me, if you're going to be a good communicator, you should probably be a good writer. And it seems like you are so succinct in how you do it that it captures the attention for those who will take the time to read. And folks, if you don't read his stuff, go read his stuff. And by the way, remember, it's activeresponsetraining.net. I made the mistake once of telling people it was .com and they couldn't find it and they blamed me. So remember the .net. But anyways, it's so succinct. And I'm presuming it comes from spending time writing cop reports forever.
That's exactly right. I was talking with Dave Spalding once, and he told me, he said, both your and my writing sound like a police report, and that's
Yes.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I've tried to, since I've retired, I've tried to read a few more books on being a better writer, and I've tried to incorporate a little bit of that, but ultimately it's short and succinct and to the point, just like my police reports I wrote for 25 years.
Well, I got to tell you, reading your stuff over time was kind of the motivation for me to occasionally dabble in writing. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, I thank you because you're now contributing content to the weekend knowledge dump. You're writing good stuff, and I'm putting it in there. So thank you.
That's pretty exciting. I loved it when I saw that you included one of his articles in there. That's so cool.
Good stuff.
Well, and yeah, you're not partial to one person or another. If it's good, it's
No,
good, right?
no.
So,
Yeah,
so on that note, literarily wise, right? I look up to people like, it may sound crazy to some, but say Mark Twain or Stephen Hunt or some others like that. Who do you, from a literary standpoint, do you not try to style yourself or model off of, but do you look up to from a literary person who's trying to write?
I write nothing like him, but my all-time favorite writer is Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau. There's elements that I copy of his style, but I lack some of his eloquence. I would definitely say Thoreau would be the biggest influence.
Boy, it's poetry. Reading
Well,
his stuff.
maybe a little Hemingway too. Throw a little Hemingway in there. He liked the shorter sentences and the more direct stuff. So combine Thoreau and Hemingway with a police report and minus about 50 IQ points, and that's my writing style.
Okay, but think about it this way. The way I read it when I read your stuff is it's succinct enough that it keeps the attention and constantly keeps moving, right? And if you're going to be successful as a business writer in today's America, you've got to be able to appeal to that. I wouldn't say shorter attention span, but because readers don't tend to have as much a short attention span, but you still have to. And it seems to me like you've kind of mastered that. So I've been kind of watching that and trying to figure out how to like do the same thing. So it's been fun to
Right.
watch.
I've tried. Thank you. And Laura, your point as to including a lot of different people in my links and that kind of stuff. I've been in the training world a long time. I started commercially training people back in 1999. I've been a cop since 95. I got my training job in 99 and started soon thereafter teaching publicly. I've been exposed to dozens, if not hundreds, of really good trainers in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I find it annoying when trainers tend to try to monopolize their students. The
Mm.
students that go to my classes also go to dozens of other classes, just like go to and continue to go to other people's training. And I think our job as trainers isn't to monopolize our students, but our real role is to steer them towards other qualified instructors.
Mhm.
And I don't talk smack about other instructors, even if I don't like them. You'll never see criticisms of other instructors in my writing. I just don't include their stuff. So
Mhm.
if you see a link, it's because I like what those people are saying and I want to expose my students to them. But it may not be something, they may be on a topic. I may never take a class on, 2-mile shooting with somebody, but maybe that guy's got something to say that somebody might be interested in that I'll share. If you write crap, I'm not going to put it on my links, but I think it's kind of our role as trainers to steer people towards other good trainers as well. And that's somewhat lacking in our industry.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where do I go from here? I have a couple of options. Adam, is there anything that you like, specifically a dying question before I move on?
Do you see yourself as a mentor, as a teacher, as a coach? How do you define yourself? Right, you're a phenomenal instructor. I got to experience that last year.
Thank
But
you.
how do you view yourself, and how do you view the duty you have? Right, I see a real duty behind what we do, and I sense the same with you. So, how do you see that?
I think probably a mixture of teacher and coach for that, depending on the subject matter that I'm imparting. I really appreciate the role of mentorship in our community, and I think that's
Mhm.
another thing that is lacking. So if you look at most of the really successful firearms instructors, especially in our industry, they all had really good mentors. A lot of them came up through police departments and they learned from senior police officers. A lot of them came through the military and were mentored there. When I started training, John Benner, the owner of the Tactical Defense Institute, recognized I had some talent very early on and mentored me. For my first few years teaching there, I didn't teach my own classes. I was just working the line like a regular grunt and learning how to do good firearms training. And his mentorship was absolutely critical to my success. And it's hard to find those mentors in this environment with the new instructors coming out. I'm trying to work with a couple of folks right now, but I don't have a fixed location. My classes are in different states every weekend. I also teach a massive variety of classes, and
Mhm.
some folks want to learn the firearms training stuff, but that's 25% of my classes. I teach the medical stuff and the physical self stuff and the knife self defense stuff. So it's kind of hard mentoring someone when my content is so varied and my teaching schedule is all across the country. But I'd like to do more of that, and I think that's probably a good way to go for any established instructor. Look for some mentees that you can help along in the process.
Okay, let's get to the meat of your book, Greg. So tell us about why you wrote the book and maybe some key components of it that you'd like people to know about. Well, are you laughing?
I laugh because it's a strange story, and I don't know that I've told the whole story very much. That book started out as an article for my website, and I kept
Really?
adding to the article and adding to the article. Just traveled. It was a travel tip article, and pretty soon the article got to be like 5,000 words. And my girlfriend at the time said, "You need to just keep writing this and turn it into a book." And I thought that's brilliant, and I worked on it on and off for almost 8 years,
Wow.
just adding little bits here and there. As I did it. Worked on it at night after I got home from work, after working my police job. Early 2020, I got diagnosed with cancer, and the I knew I had cancer, but I didn't know if it had spread yet. And because of the COVID restrictions that were in place in my state, the scan I needed to get to know whether I had 5 years left or 5 months left was not deemed medically necessary. I had to wait several months, knowing I had a pretty bad version of cancer, but not knowing really any kind of life expectancy stuff. And I started thinking, what do I need to do if my life expectancy is only a couple months? I said, my priority was I got to get the book out.
Wow.
So I started working nonstop on it, 30, 40 hours a week, in addition to my cop job and everything else. Put it out April 2020. And that was kind of the genesis of the book. So
That's
it
kind
does
of
it,
that's
it, it
kind of
has
a lot of, oh, by the way, information,
yeah,
Greg.
yeah. So the book has a few spelling errors in it because I was rushing so much, and my goal was I thought I was going to be dead in the next month, and I was like, I got to get this thing out. I don't have time to send this thing away from an editor. I'm going to die before it's published.
Oh
Slam it
my
out. Let's get it done.
gosh.
So I've kind of I could I think I've got 8 spelling errors in it in a 500-page book, but I've left those typos in as kind of an ode to imperfection to remind me of it'll be okay. This is an Amazon bestseller, even though it's got a couple of errors in it. So.
That's so funny. I caught 3 of them, and I was wondering, wait a minute, I know Greg's not doing that. Makes sense now. Okay.
That's wild. That makes me wonder what else that diagnosis did for the urgency in your life.
It made things a little different. Definitely a little
Yeah.
different.
Was that like just a huge out of nowhere thing or?
Yeah, yeah. It's prostate cancer. My father had prostate cancer, so I regularly got the PSA blood tests to check for that. It came back really high, and I had the biopsy, and they're like, "Yep, you've got cancer, and not only do you have cancer, you have a bad version of this cancer, but we don't know if it's spread or not yet. We don't know if you're going to die soon or if you've got years left." So, yeah, it kind of changed a little bit of everything.
I don't want to say nonchalant about it, but what was that like initially?
It made me do a massive amount of research because that's what I do. And I decided, I live kind of a unique life. I've done anything I've ever wanted to do. I've structured my life for absolute freedom to do whatever I've wanted to do. And I've traveled all over the world, and, I've written a bestseller, and, had wonderful relationships with women, and I had great job success. And the side effects for the cancer treatment that I was considering would definitely wreck my lifestyle at that point in time. So my initial idea, once I got looking at all the side effects and all the treatment, was I wasn't going to treat the cancer, and I was just going to let it kill me. That was my attitude. Like, I'm just going to live the best life I can until the cancer takes me. 2023, I found a new treatment that didn't have the side effects associated with the traditional treatments. Did that surgery, looked great. My cancer was eradicated, and just recently I found out it's back again. So it's kind of this
Wow.
up and down, but I've kind of already dealt with the whole idea that this thing could eventually kill me, and that's okay because I've lived a good life. I'm going to, fight it as best that I can, as long as my quality of life isn't diminished by that. I'm not in any hurry to go, but when it takes me, it takes me, and I'm just going to live a good life the best that I can until then.
Wow, that's a remarkable outlook.
It's a
I
it
just
it kind of I recognize I'm a little bit of a strange position. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I don't have anyone who's depending on me for anything, and my choices might be very, very different if I had a wife and kids I had to support.
Still though, the resiliency that you have is remarkable. I'm sure. I
Thank you.
mean,
It's
you're
the only
not
way to
like
put
this every day, are you, Greg? I mean, seriously.
it. Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's inspiring. Well, originally that topic was opened up with your book.
Uh-huh.
We went off
Let's
we
get
went
back
off
to the book.
on a
Yeah, you asked
tangent.
why
Yeah.
I wrote the book. There it was. I was like, I got all this travel knowledge in my head. I'm gonna die. I better get it out on paper somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
that's the short answer.
okay, there you go. So yeah, what do you want to know about the book?
I guess the question I'm wondering is you're talking about international travel. I'm wondering, are there any huge differences? I'm not a traveler, so I'm sorry if the questions I ask are very naive. Are there a lot of differences between international travel and how you would go about that versus domestic? And I assume there are a lot more risks with international.
Actually, no. And some of the biggest and most common comments I've gotten from the readers were, you make this book out to be an international travel guide, but really 75% of the tips in the book are equally applicable to traveling to more dangerous areas in the United States.
Mhm.
It's not a travel guide like most of them, where it's split out by destination. In this country you should be doing this, and in this country watch out for this. It's a general principles for living a crime-free travel life, and making your trips a little bit more convenient and fun. So I think a lot of it is also equally applicable to travel even within the United States.
Okay.
Just what to bring and organizing your stuff, and a lot of the scams are the same in the United States and in other countries. And I talk about warning signs of potential scams and criminal activity, and that's all the same everywhere else. So I think it
Mhm.
has some value for domestic travelers as well.
I think one of the most common questions, I don't know about you, Adam, that I get from my students is they're really concerned about airplane travel with firearms.
Yes,
And
yes.
would you say there's a wide range of how the airlines handle that depending on the company or about the same overall?
There are varieties. Every airline is slightly different. Every airport is slightly different. I fly now to most of my training destinations. I forget the exact number, but I flew somewhere between 60 and 70 domestic flights with guns last year. So I do a lot of flying, and most of them follow the same kind of basic protocol, but every agent is slightly different, and every airline is slightly different, and every airport is slightly different, and you have to be somewhat adaptable for that. And I think a lot of people in the firearm community are rule followers, and they want to follow to the exact letter of the law, and that's a good thing. And when a ticket clerk, when they're checking their guns, tells them to do something that they know isn't exactly how the law instructs them to do, it creates some mental turmoil and creates some friction and frustration of the process. I've come to the point where I will just do what they tell me to do, even if I know it might be somewhat not 100% compliant with the letter of the law. I want a smooth travel experience rather than to be right about this. And I know a lot of gun people, no, no, no. The law clearly states that I can't let you look at my gun because you will, have the key to my gun locks, and I am the sole possessor of that key. If they want to look at your gun, let them look at your gun. It's not that big of a deal. And yes, they should not possess the key to your lock under federal law, but TSA regulations are different than that, and each airline regulation is different than that. I would just tell folks, I wrote a big article about things on my website about all of the things to look out for. Follow the general principles, and then just do what the airline ticket clerk tells you to do, unless that is really in violation of a major law or is going to get your gun stolen or something like that. Just follow their instructions. It's better to get your gun where you need to be at your destination than to be right about the law.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 questions. In a week and a half or so, I'm flying to St. Louis. Am I going to die? Question number one.
St. Louis, maybe.
Right.
I've had some adventurous times in St. Louis at various law enforcement, places. Riding with my gun in my hand in East St. Louis in an unmarked Crown Vic was a fun story. But yeah.
Okay. The other one is whether it's, and this may be different for domestic versus international. So for domestic or international, if you're taking a flight, since you obviously can't take your guns on the flight, what defensive tools do you carry? Here's why I ask. I'm going to a police training event with my partner, and we're flying from Colorado to Hilton Head, North Carolina. And in the flight between Atlanta to Raleigh, Durham, a gunshot went off in the airplane. I recognized it as a gunshot. I was sitting towards the front. I heard a handgun go off, and I knew instantly. I literally broke my spork and got it all sharp because I was ready to stab people if I needed to. Later, we found out, the co-pilot had pulled the gun out and was twirling it in the cockpit. And it was on Fox News the next day. The guy, the co-pilot got suspended. All sorts of bad things happened apparently. But it went through the fuselage. Nobody got hurt. So instantly, that became my defensive tools, breaking off a spork and taking the sharp side ready to go. What defensive tools do you carry with you when you're going on flights, and this may be different domestic versus international?
What I carry on the flights tends to be the same domestic or international.
Yep.
And I don't have any problem with some type of improvised sharp object. I just think probably the quicker way to get somebody out of the fight is by beating them in the head rather than stabbing them with a somewhat less effective improvised stabbing device like a pen, a broken fork, something like that. It's certainly going to cause pain, but I need to cause a dysfunction. And if I knock the lights out of them, I think that's a little quicker than waiting for them to bleed out because I cut their throat with a spork. No, both paths get you the same way. I'm thinking a little bit faster, so I tend to focus more on impact weapons for inside the flights. I use a small 2-battery flashlight that I could use as a small handheld impact weapon, and then my other one, old biker weapon of choice, a master padlock and a bandana, and I put both of them in my carry-on bags separate from each other. They go right through the TSA screening without any issue because neither are prohibited. Once I get past TSA, I loop the bandana through the padlock hasp and tie it off, and I've got a really flexible impact weapon that I can knock someone out with. That tends to be my weapon of choice. I wrote about a story in one of the articles. There was a crazy guy on one of my flights, and I was happening to be flying business business class then. The guy wanted to plug in his phone to charge his phone, and he was irate that there was no electrical outlets at the seat that he was in, and just went crazy. And he went up to the galley and tried to plug his phone into the kitchen area of the airplane, and the stewardess said, you can't plug your phone in here. And he said, well, then I'm going to break down the cockpit door and plug it in there. The flight attendant looked at me, and I'm sitting actually in the front row in business class, and the only thing I'm thinking of is this dumbass is going to be trying to break down the door, and I'm going to be on the flight with the armed pilot. He's going to shoot the guy, and I am his backstop right now. I'm normally a dude that's like, not your people, not your problem, but it's rapidly becoming my problem if I'm the pilot's backstop. So the flight attendant asked me, will you help me protect the cabin door if he rushes the door? And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. I said, hand me a seatbelt extension. And she kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? And the thought in my mind is, I've got my tools, but why should I bloody my tools if I can use theirs? So a seatbelt extension, once you click the seatbelt together, you've got that heavy buckle portion of the belt on a flexible seatbelt material, webbing material, a great flexible impact weapon right there. And I told the flight attendant, that's what I'm going to use to bash the back of his head when he's trying to get in the cockpit. And the flight attendant got this big smile and handed me the seatbelt extension. And I waited for the guy to break down the door, but he didn't, so I never got to smash him. But that's a pretty decent flexible impact weapon that they have on every flight. For your audience, doing a mental after action report, I think is kind of important when you get into these kind of situations. What could I have done better in that scenario? What did I screw up? It just struck me, I could have solved this problem if I just had a portable power bank to loan the dude. All he wanted to do was charge his phone. He was absolutely obsessed with charging his phone. And I could have de-escalated that whole thing if I just gave him a little portable power bank, said, hey, dude, charge your phone, give me back the thing at the end of the flight. That would have solved all those problems. So now I carry a little power bank with me for that purpose. Hopefully I'll use that more commonly than the seatbelt extension to bang somebody's head in.
So small commercial here, right? You guys heard the bandana and the padlock thing? It's something I've stolen before and used. Go get his book, guys. Choose Adventure. Go get his book. It's full of all sorts of cool stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think what I gathered from that, Greg, isn't so much like taking notes on the things, the items, but thinking what's around me, what resources do I have, and how can I best utilize them? That's really the point of what you're saying. It's not search for this item. It's use your brain.
The flight attendants, I've done some training for some flight attendants before on some small private airlines. They brought me in to do some training. And, the flight attendants are often trained to use hot coffee or heated water as a weapon, talking about things that are around you. They've got that pot of coffee brewing in the galley of the airplane, throwing boiling hot coffee into somebody's face might, reset their OODA loop a little bit.
I think, maybe. It might just make them more mad. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
But it would, it might make them hesitate a little bit. Yeah, that's really interesting. Adam.
You've been all over the world, right? I've been to quite a few places, not as many as you, but I grew up overseas and I spent a lot of time overseas. For the Americans that travel overseas that have yet to read your book, what are some of the very quick, down and dirty tips that you'd give them to just think about as they begin to travel?
Tips in what regard? To just have a general better experience, or to reduce the chance of criminal victimization, or get along with people better? Because it's all kind of different.
Well, instead of just, better travel tips, but really just the security of it, right? I mean, everywhere I went, everybody's looking for the Americans because the rich white Americans are going to show up and we're going to take them for everything they got. Right. So just the security aspect of it, and then what to look for.
In that kind of a scenario, I'm a big white guy. I'm 270 pounds and I've got no hair, and I speak English.
I see some.
I can speak Spanish, but I can't pass myself off as a South American even when I speak Spanish, because I have a gringo accent and I'm twice the size of the average South American that I encounter. You may not be able to fully hide the fact that you're an American, or you're a wealthy Westerner, or Western European, Australian, however it is. So somebody with money in a country where people don't have money. But the strategy I tend to embrace is you might not look like you were born in the country, but there's lots of Westerners who live in those countries. Can I look enough like a local that I live there? And those thieves, those scam artists, they don't target the residents of that area, even if those residents were born in another country, because the residents know what's up. So I tend to avoid speaking a whole lot of English in very populated areas. I tend to dress as close as possible to the locals. And that often means not wearing shorts, especially in city areas in most places in Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. You won't find locals wearing shorts. I don't wear any kind of clothing logo that has any English language stuff on it. You'll see kids wearing English language t-shirts, but you won't see locals
No,
that live there wearing stuff with any kind of English. That, and that includes like monogram polos like yours, Adam. You see a lot of business folks wearing their company polos. That's a big no in my book, because you're telling them you speak English by the logo that they're there, and you're telling them that you work for a company that cares about their existence, and that kind of makes you a kidnapping target. So I tend to follow the directions of the locals, look as much as possible like the locals, and follow the locals' preferences as to how they act in public. Try not to be the ugly American. Smile where the locals are smiling. Don't smile where they're not smiling. And you aren't going to pass as an indigenous person in that country, but you may be able to pass as someone who lives there, and that's good enough.
Americans are always in a hurry. I saw overseas where I was at and grew up. Americans walk different. They just do.
Very true.
So I
Very
learned.
true.
I had, wherever I was in Eastern Europe or Middle East or different parts of Africa, I tried to mimic the way they walk. And you
Yes,
find different continents kind of walk a little bit different.
they
That
do.
seemed to help. And
Yes,
Americans are always in a rush and in a hurry. And if you're in a rush and a hurry, whether you wear anything that portrays Americanism, that rush and hurry right there stands out as an American.
it
So it
does.
may sound like, okay, island time, slow down a little bit. That's actually a
Yep,
safety feature.
it really is. You're absolutely correct. No doubt. Going with the flow. I think too, those criminals in the third world countries, in the developing world, those criminals in that area, they're looking for not only people that don't belong there, but people who are nervous about the situation. And a lot of times, those people who are nervous and scared move faster because they're scared. And that typical American aggressive fast walk might also be interpreted as, hey, that person's scared and doesn't want to be here. Why is that? Well, it's because he doesn't belong here, and maybe he's got something we want to steal.
Hmm.
So I think there's multiple reasons. You're absolutely right with that.
Where and how should people carry their valuables, their cash when they're out and about, their cell phones, their passports, and things like that?
I really think, and I've started doing this within the last year, cell phones are so important in our travels these days. In my early years, it wasn't as important, but now with all the mapping features and all of the access to all of our banking stuff and everything else, cell phones are important. So I would definitely recommend having a backup smartphone that you take, just a burner phone, a cheap smartphone you buy at Walmart, and activate as a backup just in case your cell phone gets stolen, because that's probably the number one thing that the crooks are
Hmm.
looking for in these other countries. I carry my cell phone in a front pocket where it's not likely to be taken from me in a pickpocketing attempt. As far as money, I tend not to carry more than what I need for the day, and I tend to split that money up. So I carry a small like money clip in my front pants pocket, and that money clip has a credit card and it has a small amount, maybe $100 of local currency. And that's what I'm buying all my stuff with. That's what I'm paying for my restaurant meals with. That's what I'm buying the bottle of water at the convenience store, that, my drinks at the bar. That all comes from there. If someone sees me using that, they're not seeing a massive amount of cash on me. And if I have to give that up, giving up one credit card and less than $100 in local security isn't going to break my bank.
If you're gonna,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, if you're going to do currency, local currency, where do you do your currency exchange? Do you do it at the airports? Do you do it before you leave the U.S.? We had folks that they would do their currency exchange locally there, and that marked them for robbery later. How do you do that?
Airport ATMs. Hit
Okay.
the ATM. The ATM's the easiest. You get the best exchange rate through the foreign ATMs that you do actually for going to a person-to-person exchange kind of situation. So I just take money out of my American bank accounts in local currency at the airport. When I run out of that money, because the ATMs are limited, every ATM has a different limit how much you can take out. I generally pick an ATM in a bank in the other country. Don't pick an ATM that's a standalone ATM on the middle of a tourist area or at a gas station or something like that. Those are the ones who are most likely to have the skimmers or robbers waiting to target them. For the ATMs that are actually in a physical bank tend to be the safest and less likely to be, scammed. You walk in the bank, nobody thinks anything of it because, especially in the developing world, that's where you pay all your bills, your electricity bill, your phone bill, your gas bill. It's all paid at the bank or the convenience store. And there's lots of people going in and out of the bank that aren't taking out massive amounts of money. Just go to the bank, hit up the ATM and pull up the local currency there.
Laura, one last question, because I know you have a lot of good ones here. Do you worry about the use of your American debit card, credit card in foreign countries?
I did. I've never had it used wrong, incorrectly. I actually wrote in my book a
Mhm.
strategy that in the next edition of the book I'm going to have to revise. You
Mhm.
can get a bank account only card, an ATM card that doesn't have a debit feature. And that's what I advised for a long time because they could, with a debit card, they could clean out your entire checking account if they have the debit card. With an ATM card, you're limited by a certain amount of the transaction every day. So I previously advised people get just a straight up ATM card that doesn't have a Visa, MasterCard debit ability. But I'm finding more and more foreign countries, the ATMs won't take those cards in foreign countries. South Africa didn't do it. Mexico now doesn't allow those. Dominican Republic, been to several countries just recently that my normal ATM card doesn't work and had to use a regular debit card. But I have not had any particular problems. But again, I do all my ATMs at an actual bank, and I don't do any standalone ATMs on the street or in little convenience stores or bars or anything like that.
That's a lot of information I never knew before.
Now you know. Are you ready to go for some third world adventure?
No, not
Not
really.
quite.
No. Well, I think we'll wrap up here in just a little bit, but unless you have something else, Adam, but you talked about what international criminals look for or what their goals are, especially your cell phone, it sounds like, and
Mhm.
how they observe behavior and the way that you dress and all those things. Criminals are criminals, right? No matter where they are. But I'm
True.
curious if there are any particular things in America what are criminals looking for in America specifically? And I guess I ask that question and I think about, well, there's all different kinds of motivations and reasons why they could be looking for money or cash but is there something when you go to these bigger cities, I guess, in general, that people should be kind of paying attention to?
If we look at criminals anywhere across the world, America, developing world, anywhere, criminals want to get paid, but they don't want to get hurt and they don't want to get caught. So what they're looking for is a victim that has something that they want. And that may be a possession, money, a phone, a purse. It may be their body, kidnapping, rape, something like that. A person who has something that they want in a scenario where they're not likely to get hurt or caught. That is the universal throughout everywhere, America or otherwise. All the criminals operate by that. Now, how they operate might be different in a foreign country versus America, how they attempt to minimize the chance of getting hurt or caught. But that's what they're looking for. And if you are traveling in a big city and you, even in America, and you're not used to traveling, place that is unknown, just think about minimize the attractiveness of what you have on your body. Make sure
Mm,
that you don't have something that they want. No ostentatious displays of wealth. No stupidly counting your big wad of bills out in public. Don't
mhm.
give them something that they want, and then try to structure your travel in such a way that makes it difficult or makes it more likely that they get hurt or caught if they try to take something from you. And I
Okay.
think that those are tips that work big city America and smallest town in rural Africa. It's all kind of the same.
I have a great follow-up question to this. I
Oh,
know the answer, Greg, but I want to hear you say it because
what if I get it wrong?
you won't. You won't. You just said be careful about the way that you present yourself and show what you have or don't have, or showing maybe clues that you might
Mhm.
have something that they want. Now, then my brain switched to maybe some friends that I know that
Mhm.
would go, oh, well, that's why I have the big gun stickers on my pickup, or that's why everyone should open carry, because then they'll know that I have a gun and then they won't mess with me. What would you
Yeah.
say to people that think that way?
Well, the gun stickers, I would say as a police officer, I dealt with lots of situations where cars with gun stickers were victimized precisely because they had gun stickers on them, because that is telling them that if that car is unattended, there's probably something that that criminal wants, i.e. the gun,
It's not
in
scaring
that
them
car,
off.
not scaring them off at all.
No.
And as far as the open carry, it may serve some general deterrent value to some low intelligent criminal that might victimize you. I'm not saying it's useless, but it may cause even more problems for some other folks. Again, it's advertising you have something that they want. A stolen gun is a very valuable thing on the street.
Mhm.
If that criminal has the feeling that he can get that open carry gun from you, that's the same as you flashing your Rolex, or $10,000 in cash in your wallet. That's a valuable thing on the street. So that open carry to the determined criminal is more of a challenge, and hey, that guy's got something I want, rather than a deterrent. So then that criminal, knowing you're open carrying, is going to come up with a way to get that gun when you're not paying attention, and you can't use it against him. And that's what these criminals do. That's their job. They do this for a living. They're better at it than you. And I see lots of open carriers thinking the gun is a talisman that's going to protect them from all different types of crime, and everybody's going to go running away. Well, as almost any cop who's pointed a gun at a really hardcore criminal will tell you, they aren't scared of your gun. The bad criminals just don't care. They've had guns pointed at them before. They've been shot at before. Your gun isn't an intimidating factor to them.
Mhm.
And if your gun is not intimidating and is something they want, I think that puts the open carrier in a dangerous position. Not my style. You'll never see me open carrying outside of maybe a wilderness area where I'm in the outdoors and there is no one else around. You won't see me open carrying.
Very well said. As I expected.
Oh, I have so many questions. This could
Oh,
go
what
2
are you
hours.
holding back
There you
for?
go.
Don't hold back.
So, okay, if you're going to let it, then.
Let it rip, Adam.
In travel, Greg, do you carry a passport with you, or do you carry the passport card? I have both,
Uh-huh.
and I keep the passport card hidden just as the backup to the passport. What do you use?
I have both as well. I don't know if I should be saying this on the podcast, but I kind of think it might be valuable because I've been to bail hearings where people who've been arrested have been ordered to surrender their passport, but they've
Right,
never
right.
been ordered to surrender their passport card.
Yep.
If I get wrongfully arrested and decide I want to go on the run, that passport card might be useful. Maybe you should edit that one out, but no, I think that's good. But I do carry the card with me. I keep my passport in the hotel room in the Airbnb where I stay. I really would strongly advise people not to carry their passport out on the streets with them in a foreign
Yes.
country. That's really valuable stuff for the criminals. A lot of places will require passports, like to do a money exchange at an official place, or sometimes even to use a credit card over a certain purchase. I've always been able to handle that with a passport card or with a copy of the passport. I will take a couple of photocopies of the passport as well, because occasionally hotels will want the passport when you're checking in, and I'd rather leave them with a photocopy than the real actual passport. I carry the card with me. The passport stays in the hotel room or the Airbnb. I do not use the hotel room safe like most travel
No,
experts would tell you to
no.
lock it up. Those things, that they have access to the safe because people leave things in them or forget the cleaners have access to your safe, and they have criminal buddies. Don't put it in the safe. Lock it up in your locked luggage. That's probably your safest place for that
So
passport.
do you carry anything besides the standard locked luggage? Because I find for me the locked luggage is a joke, right?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
carry anything
yeah, it
else?
is, but it takes time to get in. So they can absolutely break in. They can go through the zipper. They can break the locks pretty easily, but it takes time, and that tends to be something that they don't have a lot of. And I have not had anything like that ever taken from any of my hotel rooms or Airbnbs in foreign countries. Knock on wood. But I have several traveling companions that have lost passports and large amounts of money from room safes. I don't use my room safe at all.
I learned as a cop how easy it is to break into a hotel safe. It's
Yep.
not hard at all. So here in the States, overseas, you're traveling, you're staying in a hotel, Airbnb, whatever else. What do you use to brace or to lock your door down besides the standard lock?
I really like at home. I really like those bars that go underneath the door lock and then
Yes.
wedge. I forget what they're even called. Just a cylindrical tube that catches the doorknob on one side and has a
Yeah.
big wedge on the bottom, but those are too big to travel with. So the things that I travel with is a door wedge, and you could use just a simple rubber door stop, but there's a commercial version that costs about $10, and it's called the Wedge It. It's a harder plastic wedge that works for a wider variety of spaces between the door and has a little bit more traction. I carry one of those with me when I travel.
So you oftentimes put out a thing where you'll say, "Hey, on this day, this flashlight's up for 30% off.
Yep,
Buy now."
yep, yep.
Is that something that they can find through you, that door wedge?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think I've listed it anywhere. It's in my book. There's a picture of it in my
Okay.
book. I don't have any affiliate links to it, but I buy mine on Amazon, and I think it was right around $10. I think that's a useful thing to do. And then the other thing that I get, especially third world countries, even the developing world, sliding glass doors are very expensive there. And when the locks break on those sliding glass doors, people tend not to replace them in Airbnbs, hotels, whatever. So I always carry a bunch of paracord with me so that I can just tie the two door handles together on a sliding glass door just in case I get one that the lock doesn't work on the kind of thing. So the Wedget and some paracord are my go-tos to carry for foreign travel.
Okay. Taxis, taking taxis and everything else. Where do you seat yourself? I tend to put myself in the back passenger side. Where do you tend to go?
I do the same thing, back passenger side, just because the biggest threat is likely the taxi driver himself.
Yes.
I want to be able to get out of the car, and I have the car as a barrier between me and him to buy myself a little bit of time. Now, with that said, in some countries, a white person, a obvious foreigner sitting in the back of a car is a
Is
target.
obvious.
That's a person with money. And in those countries, I will sit up front with the driver as if I'm the driver's friend rather than a paying passenger,
Hmm.
because that puts you a little bit less at risk of getting targeted in those kind of situations.
So I was sitting in the front, same thing, country where if you're in the back, you're the rich person. So therefore
Yep.
the attack. I had somebody,
Yep.
and I think it was the driver's friend. I think it was a setup. They tried to
Uh-huh.
jump in the back passenger side directly behind me. So I
Uh-huh.
just ripped off the seatbelt, jumped out, and went the other
Yep.
way. Was the same
Yep.
thing for you?
I would do
Okay.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You got research everything in advance. So I'll tell you, I was on this little tiny island off the coast of Nicaragua, and excuse me, their taxis were all like gypsy taxis. They were people with cars that just gave people rides. There weren't any official taxis, and I didn't know it before I visited the island, but it's commonplace to pick up more than one fare in those people.
Yes.
So they will let multiple strangers into a regular car. This isn't a collectivo bus or anything like that. This is just a person with a car. And the first time that happened, when that dude pulled over and another guy got in, I thought, oh my God, I'm about to get jacked here. But no, that's just how they work. And they're going to collect as many fares as possible, and they're going to fill up their cars. So might be worthwhile, doing some internet research on the place you go. In general, if there's another person getting into the car, that's a bad sign, and I want to get out of there and end that ride. But some places that's normal, and one of those collectivo buses in Latin America where people just get on
Yeah.
and off constantly at same way with some of those gypsy cabs. I tend to default more so now, if the countries have it, to using something like Uber or Lyft or whatever their country version is of that, because it's really unusual in any country. I've never found a country where if you're paying for an Uber or a Lyft or some rideshare service where they stop and pick up an extra person. That's not the thing that anyone does. That gives me a little extra of insurance, and it also keeps me from having to handle cash to give to the driver. It's all handled through the app. If I have to avoid, if that allows me to avoid pulling out my wallet in a public place, I think that's a good trade-off. So I almost exclusively use the ride-sharing services when they're available.
So that goes to my next question. In the States, Uber, Lyft, or a taxi company?
I use Uber. Just talking to the two drivers, this is the big difference. The drivers, if you ask your Uber or your Lyft driver which company they like better, every one of the drivers will say that Uber gives the driver better directions as to how to find the passengers to pick up. And that's what I want. I don't want to be standing on some dangerous street corner waiting for some driver who may know where I am or may not. I'm willing to pay a little extra money to have the driver be able to find me easier. And apparently, from the drivers that I've talked to, Uber's ride sharing app makes it a little bit easier for the drivers to find you.
For here in the States or overseas, for a lady, do you recommend money belts, say money down in a bra, a belt where it's actually zippered? Where would you suggest hiding things like that on yourself?
I guess it depends on who you're trying to hide the money from. An armed robber always checks tourists for money belts. So, if you're getting stuck up, either a strong arm robbery or an armed robbery, they're gonna find the money belts. They don't often take off people's shoes or check their bras. The money belt is really good in that it frustrates pickpockets. And if you're primarily looking to avoid being pickpocketed, I really like the money belts. As far as robbery, I tend to split up my money. I talked about the money clip that I carry.
Yeah.
I will
Yes.
also carry a wallet. I have a wallet that has a little string on it that I loop over my belt. I actually put down my pants, not in my pocket. And I'll carry some extra cash in there. And then I will also carry a credit card and some cash in a shoe underneath the insole of the shoe. I carry, in more dangerous countries, 3 different stashes of cash, just so I can give up one if I need to. Even if I get patted down and they find 2, they're probably not looking for 3. And that's how I go about doing it. I don't personally use the money belts, but I think if you're not really worried about robbery and you're just worried about having a convenient source of cash that is tough for pickpockets to get, I think the money belts has some value.
So big cities or overseas, ladies, purses or no purses? And if purses, are you thinking the ones with the security cord through it, or would you suggest no
Yeah.
purses at all?
Whatever you carry, I would definitely carry it in front of the body,
Yeah.
especially overseas. People who use razor blades to slash the bags and take your stuff when you have a backpack or a purse behind your back, those are really common. So I carry in front of the body. As far as a handheld purse versus one that is attached to the body, there are strengths and weaknesses to each one.
Mhm.
The ones attached to the body are probably going to be harder for the people to get and may not be as good of a target. But the downside is when they grab it and take it, you better be able to fight your way to avoid being abducted with it or be able to shrug out of it quickly. Because when they grab that cross body bag, you're going with them. It might be easier to give up a handheld bag, even if that means that it might be a little bit more likely to be targeted. So
Mm.
I'd kind of look at ask the woman, do you feel comfortable fighting to not go along with it? Do you feel comfortable being drugged to the ground when he grabs that crossbody bag? I wouldn't recommend a crossbody bag for my 78-year-old mother who might get knocked to the ground and break a hip if somebody grabs it. In that scenario, I think the handheld bag would be better so that she could ditch it easier rather than risk a broken hip if the guy tries to take it. I think the defender makes a little bit of a difference with that one.
And one last one. I'm sure we're taking too much time here. In hotter climates, whether it's in the States or overseas, certainly overseas or at least outside the US, in hotter climates, flip flop type sandals and closed shoes.
Never flip flop. I never wear
Good,
flip flops outside
good,
the pool or the beach.
good.
A pool or if I'm in my hotel going to my hotel pool, I feel okay wearing the flip flops. If I'm on the beach, I'm okay with the flip flops. Other than that, I never wear
Good.
flip flops. I want shoes I can run in. That's a hard no for me. I actually I wrote in the book. There's a story in the book where I Belize, a taxi driver, drove us down a back alley and then jumped out of the car and ran. And I thought he was setting us up for somebody to rob us. And I got my girlfriend out of the car and started moving away, trying to get away from it. And she's wearing flip flops and she couldn't run. And that was maybe 2006. That was a long time ago. I learned pretty early on that me and my traveling companions in the city, flip flops are a no go.
You could make a
Well,
t-shirt line just about that alone. I mean, I could see the t-shirt right now.
On the beach or at the pool. Maybe a grungy shower in a third world hostel, but those are the only places that the flip flops go for me.
That seems like common sense, but I don't think people would think that way,
No,
Greg,
they
in
don't. They
general.
don't. They
No.
think, hey, they're in the vacation mindset, and that's the issue. I'm
Yeah.
on vacation. I'm here to have fun. I'm in this beautiful, tropical country, and the ladies are thinking, I just got my pedicure before my vacation, and I'm going to show off my pretty toes. And the guys are they're stumbling in drunk from the night before and don't want to worry about lacing up their shoes, so they throw on the
Mm.
flip flops, and you see it everywhere. And it's that vacation mentality. I'm on vacation. I can't possibly be victimized. Yeah, save the flip flops for the beach.
Thank you so much for all of this wisdom. My gosh. Adam, you were doing like a rapid fire. I loved it.
I like it. Keeping me on my
I,
toes.
I haven't even started. I could go for hours, but I wish we could just listen and listen, listen. But we'll stop for now. Maybe you'll be willing to come back and talk to us again.
Absolutely. This was fun. You
Okay.
guys asked me some questions that I haven't answered before on other podcasts. So I'm happy to come back anytime you guys will have me.
That's awesome. Well, let's make sure people know where to find you. So your 2 websites are activeresponsetraining.net and chooseadventurebook.com for the book.
I post my articles on Twitter, but it's automatic through my website, and I don't actually interact with anyone on Twitter or X or whatever it is right now. And I'm not
Okay.
on Instagram, so Facebook and LinkedIn are about the only places you can find me in the social media world.
Okay. Great. Awesome. I learned a lot, which isn't surprising, right, Adam? Because I don't travel a whole lot. I didn't grow up in Africa like you did. I grew up in the Midwest, but there was a lot of things that I just hadn't even really considered or thought of that I went, oh, that's really helpful. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad I gave you something you could use.